Hello there. Today we're going to talk about the therapeutic power of the now section of the PATH process. So PATH, as you probably be aware, is a person-centered planning approach. And it's one of the, I always think it's like the gold standard of group person-centered planning used around an individual, child, family, team, service. But what I've increasingly noticed, having been, working with this process for over 20 years now, is the now section, which initially I used to think, oh, well, it's just a bit of a quick check-in on what's going on in the present, a few facts and figures and a quick catch of the feelings, but not really as important as the dream section, obviously being the most important, and the kind of sensing the goal section which follows it. That forward piece has always felt the most important, but increasingly I've had some experiences that have made me think, you know what, this now section has its own power. And I think it's something about people being able to say what's going on and feel heard. And this has been quite a wide spectrum of people I've been working with, from right down to a child and their family, to a kind of a team of psychologists. Both situations, people wanted to say how they felt, big time, and they wanted to be heard, and they wanted to be recorded and kind of be listened to. And straight away, it struck me at the time, and it's been striking me since, this is very therapeutic. People want to be heard, they want to be listened to. They don't need it fixing necessarily, but it is a powerful thing to do, just to hear it, to listen to it, and then to record it on the big visual graphic, which is what a path is. And the more I've thought about it and noticed, well, it's interesting. Something else is sometimes going on as well. It sometimes is almost allowed a conversation which perhaps begins in this section and then carries on into the next sections, which, if you recall, are who wants to sign up to be part of this plan, how we're going to stay strong, and then setting actions. That's what's happening next in the following sections. But the conversation sometimes begins here. So a couple of situations. One, I was struck by one young man in the care setting. This is many years ago now, and he was pretty much spending most of his time asleep. It was literally day become night, night become day. But even night wasn't, even though he was awake at night, it wasn't really very long. And it was increasingly, the more I heard about his story and the more facts people were sharing about his story, you could almost put your psychologist hat on for a moment. Not that we were doing this in the part of the process, but you could easily think, oh, well, I bet he was doing this to kind of block out reality. It was all too hard, really. The things that had happened in his life, much, much too hard to hold in the present, to be conscious about it. But, we're not doing that when we're person-centered planning, obviously. But afterwards, thinking about this, it must have been good for him to be able to share this, that, you know what, I am sleeping all the time, and I'm not really very happy about that, but I just am. To just say it without any interpretation from me or anybody else, without any analysis, it just got said. And he heard himself say that, and people he cared about heard him say that as well. And I think also this team of psychologists where everybody had these very strong feelings. And it was right across from the leadership right through to assistant psychologists, a lot of feelings in the team, and they were all able to share them. And it was contained and heard and listened to, which seemed just very, very, very powerful in its own right, really. And I'm thinking also about a young woman who wasn't really very happy with where she was living. And she was with an adoptive couple who'd sort of taken her on. It wasn't her choice, and she couldn't live with her own mum. And she was starting to say that, and you could see there was a sort of jealousy about her adoptive brother and sister she was having to live with, that perhaps resented her being there, and she was perhaps resenting them, and it was starting to kind of come through. And all the tensions around that were able to be said from her point of view, which she was able to say, and she started creating a wonderful metaphor around a cake. Anyway, you don't need to know that, but it was just interesting how she was expressing it. And her adoptive parent was also able to share things also in a very kind of rich way, and also hearing what the young person was saying and thinking, you know what, I need to act on this. I need to listen to her much more than I have been doing. And she did say that out loud, which I took to be a good sign. So there's something very powerful. We're listening to facts and figures, but we're listening for feelings. I've increasingly started using an end question in this section, which I don't recall was in the original development of this process by Jack Pearpoint, Marcia Forrest and John O'Brien. They were the creators of the path process. I don't recall that they had this in, but I've certainly been adding it and finding it useful. And that's simply, is there an elephant in the room? Is there something here that nobody is speaking about that we all need to talk about? Oh, Dad's coming out of prison next week. Yeah, that kind of thing. Dad's coming out of prison. Or there's a massive funding cut, 10 of you are going to lose your jobs. Really big things that need to be spoken about, that perhaps are haunting the whole planning session, but nobody's even vaguely alluding to them. This is an attempt to flush it out. Again, you haven't got to do anything fancy with it. You're just hearing it, you're holding it, it's being recorded, and then you're using that as you move on into the future. There is a real power to listening, hearing, and recording what's being said, and that itself has a therapeutic power. You don't need to do any more with it, don't need to interpret it, do anything fancy psychologically with it, drill down deeper with it. No, you just hear it, contain it, hold it, move on to the other sections and see where that leads you. So I invite you to reflect as you do the person-centered planning, wherever you're using this lovely process. Reflect on that power of that now. Keep it safe, keep it contained, but don't let it shake you. Just hold your ground, listen to what's said, hear it, appreciate it, and then move on to the next piece. I hope you've found this useful, this session and reflection. If you've got comments on this or questions on this, please add it in the comment section. If you've liked this video, give us a like, and if you want to subscribe to hear more of these, subscribe to Inclusive Solutions. And if you want training on the path process, because maybe you haven't come across it in full, or you like some more, maybe to top up, or we've got new staff involved, invite us and we'll send some trainers out. We'll show you exactly how to work in this kind of way. Thank you very much for listening. I've been Colin Newton, educational psychologist.